using soft Adcomold material, and for this procedure you need a number of things. I use a Dremel hand tool equipped with a grinding wheel, and later on I'm going to use a very small drill. This will be a number 60. A piece of tubing. I have a wooden block and a knife. This is a standard ear light that we use. I prepared a cotton block. This is the liquid, the material that I'm going to use. This is the powder. I'm going to be using this as a measure. This is approximately a tablespoon measure. This is the syringe that we use, and this is the Australian syringe. It's based on actually a dental syringe. And the syringe is used with a filling tube, and this is the device that's used to load the material into the syringe. In addition, I have two small mixing glasses. One is empty and one has some plain water in it. I have a timer. This is a spatula that I'm going to be using to mix the material. I have a core drill. This is going to be used to drill out the mold. And I have a lighter that I use for bending. I'm going to begin by placing the cotton block in the ear canal. And you want to go fairly well into the ear, into the second bend. And you want to well place the cotton block. I'm now going to begin by mixing the material. I want to get everything that I'll need ready, because once the material starts to set, you have to work fairly quickly. I'm going to start by putting in a rounded measure of powder to the mixing cup. I'm now going to add the liquid. I use an eyedropper to measure and dispense the liquid. It's much easier than using a spoon, which is in the manufacturer's instructions. I know from experience that I'm going to be adding 2 eyedropper folds to start with. And that's 1. This is 2. The exact amount of liquid depends on a number of factors: the age of the material, the temperature, as well as some other factors. I'm going to start mixing it, and it's going to be a little dry, so I'm going to add some additional liquid. Again, I know pretty much from experience about how much to add. And I start mixing that. Now, I disregard the manufacturer's instructions, who tells you to mix it very, very gently. I'm mixing it vigorously. I want to incorporate air into the mixture deliberately. This will make the material resilient, which is what I want it to be. When it becomes cohesive and starts to pull away from the side, I remove it, and I continue by kneading it, rolling it between my hands until it gets a little harder. And again, I know from experience at what point I'm going to load it into the syringe. I put the loading tube on the syringe. I inject the material into the syringe. Takes a bit of pressure. Now I'm going to load the plunger into the syringe, and I'm going to introduce the material into the ear canal with both hands, and I have to press fairly hard. I start gently, and then I finish by pressing hard, and now I partially fill in the concha. I now wet my finger, which makes the following step easier. And I smooth out and gently pack in the material into the punch. We're now going to wait for about 7 minutes. But while we're waiting, I'm going to clean the syringe. This is very, very important because if material is left in the syringe, it will discolor it, and future molds will have a marbleized appearance. So what I just do is clean this. By pulling some tissue paper through it. Then I reassemble the syringe. And I'm ready for the next impression. Okay, we're now ready to remove the impression, which will become the final mold. And we first do this by loosening it. Okay, now we want to remove it very gently, taking care not to overly stretch or distort the mold. Here it comes. Now, look at the impression. It's a fairly deep canal. And we're going to start by removing the cotton block and cotton thread. And it comes away fairly easily. I'm now going to finish 2 of the molds. I have 2 impressions here. I've taken one previously. And I'm going to make 2 different styles of molds. One will be a canal mold and the other one will be a full shell type of mold. I'm going to begin by preparing some tubing, which I'm going to bend. Being careful not to burn the material. I'm going to cut the end of the tubing so that it's tapered. I'm going to start now by making a canal mold, and I'm going to begin by cutting the tip off this one. I want to leave it fairly long. Now before I proceed, if you'll notice, it is S-shaped, and as such, this individual is a pretty good candidate for a canal mold. People that have worn hearing aids for a much longer time or are older, their canals would tend to be straighter, and as such they would not get the kind of retention from a canal mold that we would get in this case. If one is unsure about whether or not a canal mold would work, the best thing is to try it. If it doesn't work, you could always make a second mold in full shell style. I'm going to start by cutting off the very end, the tip. I'm now going to cut off this material to convert it into a canal mold. And what I do is I'm going to cut it from this point, which is the inner curve, where the inside, beginning of the canal meets the outer part, and I'm going to cut it along here at this angle. Put that down. And I'm going to cut. Okay. This we can of course discard. I'm now going to take the Dremel, and these edges are of course sharp, and I'm just going to round them off. Just so that they're round. This is the outer part. And I use a combination of inspecting it visually and feeling it, again, to make sure that it's not sharp. I'm going to do the same thing to the tip. Notice that I keep both hands down here so I get good control. I'm now going to drill out the hole for the tubing. Now, it's important that I realize that in this case, this is a left mold, and this will be the orientation in which the mold will go into the ear. The reason I want to do this is when I put the hole through, I don't want to drill the hole in the center. I want to kind of do it toward the upper part. And there's a reason for this, which will become clear later.